the author, but I have been very, very lucky that all the covers have been ones that I adore. And the first cover is a cat because of the cat, the little orange cat. The second cover is a wolf, obviously, because of Christopher. And we had considered, I don't know if you read that one yet. You have you read? Well, you know the scene at the end with Raz's horse? Yeah. Well, we had considered putting horse on the front of the cover, but it kind of just made no sense. So basically, you spend the entire trilogy waiting to see Albie. So that's why Albie on the front cover. That's the thing, like Albie, we only see him through the eyes of two people who have known him only as their little brother. And particularly with Razzie, who when he first meets Wynne again after 5 years, he's probably like completely shocked that he's this woman. Whereas before, I mean, all through the books, Razzie, if he was my big brother, I'd kick his ass. I'm just like, look, because he does nothing but try and rub a cotton wool and shove her in the background all the time. And I think the two of them, him and Wynne, have this attitude to Albie, and they kind of carry him through all the books. So when they finally meet this bloke who has spent the last 5 years literally wading through the blood of his father's enemies, and has spent what they've spent the last 5 years talking and in roles of diplomacy, well, for Razzie in a huge role of diplomacy, and for Winter as this kind of sidelined creature who's getting to know things all sideways and, you know, twisting around and turning. And when they finally get to meet this kind of very physical, striding warrior who's been through the kind of physical mill that they literally have no concept of, because they haven't been at war, I'd say it's a huge kick in the face. That's why it's fun to have. Unpleasant men who allow their disregard for others to dominate the way they live, and so they had no regard for anyone who wasn't part of this band called the Lugaro, and they used the legend of the werewolf to intimidate the villages that they would invade and steal slaves from. But there were a lot of themes in the books that I wanted to tackle that were quite heavy. You know, like the themes of revenge and the themes of laying aside your own personal anger for the better of society, and how difficult that is, because it is. I wanted people to know that it was a difficult thing to ask folks to do. And once I decided to make the Lugaro as evil and as bad as they are, or disregarding of other people's rights, I thought I'd push it. And so this is all while I'm still thinking of the story. And so I made the Lugaro one step further, and I made them like the people who have also allowed this to dominate them physically, so they become wolves. So they allow it's a manifestation of their greed and their evil. But I have a huge problem with this thing that's in young adult literature of innate evil, right? For human beings being innate just because of the way they were born. And so I always had this dichotomy between Christopher and the Lugaro, and that they had poisoned each other's lives. But I then, as soon as I decided that the Lugaro were wolves, I decided that I would make the hero wolf as well. So that the way he was raised, it's simply just something that you're born as. And the way he was raised has made him a good person, despite the fact of, you know, so nobody is born that way. But nonetheless, when the Lugaro, they band together because this is the one common thing among them, the werewolves, and this is why they have the sevens, you know, where they go and they mate all over the place, and then they gather up children. They gather up children and they keep the children that are wolves, and they raise them as warriors. But because they've raised them in a certain way, that makes them bad. But Christopher is a wolf who hasn't been raised as a Lugaro, so he's good. But his fear and his anger makes him a wolf, whereas their greed